Hello, and let's get started. This is what my starter looks like 13 hours after feeding it. Here you'll see the bubbles are starting to form. You want to use your digital scale, a large bowl, and get started with my general recipe of 700 grams of water. This will make 2 loaves. Then 100 grams of starter. Make sure that it floats to show that it is active, and whisk until it looks like bubbly milk. I am going to break a rule on this recipe. I have made this recipe before if you want to check the original video, but at minute 4:34 is where you'll see me break one of the cardinal rules. Here I've added the 1,000 grams of flour, and I start to mix. Eventually with my hands. It's alright to be rough with it, as long as you get as much of the edges off of the bowl as possible. I'm almost done mixing it well. It will be sticky, and that is okay. Just take as much off your hands as possible, and then you will cover with a damp paper towel for about an hour before you start your first set of stretch and folds. This is where you grab an edge, you pull it upwards, and then plop it back downwards to the middle. You want to make a full circle as you do the stretch and folds all the way around. Go ahead and cover for 30 minutes and leave this alone in your oven with the light on. This will be my second set of stretch and folds. It looks a little bit shinier, a little bit more manageable. And don't forget to have wet hands when you do this. If your hands are wet, it is just a little bit easier to grab the dough without it sticking fully to your hands. You make a full circle here, and then eventually you will cover this again. But before I do that, I personally like to tuck my fingers in and wrap it around in a full circle so I can shape it in a circular shape before leaving it alone again. So go ahead and cover for an additional 30 minutes. And this will be my third set of stretch and folds. On this round is where I add 20 grams of salt. Personally, I like adding the salt later and in parts, so I've added about half the salt here. I grab a corner, I raise it up and plop it down, and I try to make a full circular set before I add the rest of the salt. It just helps the gluten form a little bit better. Here I am just shaping the dough as best as possible into a round circular piece of dough. I just tuck my fingers in, I lift it up slightly, and I let it fall back down. And slowly but surely, you will get that circular round shape that you want to achieve. I am going to cover it once more. Some of the bubbles have started to form, which is good. And this is my fourth set. At this point, I am doing what is called coils. This is where you grab it from the middle. You'll see me here. Grab it from the middle and let gravity help you. The ends will start to drag down and fall downwards. At that point, you plop it back down, you turn your bowl, and you repeat the process. At this point, I'm just tucking it in using the tops of my fingers and shaping a round ball of dough. Now, this is where you're supposed to let it rest and proof on your counter or in the oven for an additional 2 to 3 hours, so it's been proofing for 6. But I broke a rule. I wasn't able to do that. And what had happened was I left it in the fridge for almost 10 hours, not actually finishing my bulk fermentation. I do know this looks a lot different than my other recipes. It has dried out, and looks to be cracking at the top of this dough. At this point, I continue my process without actually knowing how the bread is going to turn out. Again, this is a recipe for 2 loaves, so here I'm just laying it out as even as possible on my counter and cutting it into halves. It looks very ugly at this point, and I just have to keep going. You know, I've dedicated this much time that I can't turn back now. So here I am just going to shape it, generally laying it flat in a square/rectangular shape. Take one corner from the right, one corner from the left, bring it to the center, and then roll this away from you. This will be my circular bowl. Now I grab it from one end and let gravity take the other end and stretch it out so it has that log shape. Then I roll it away from myself once more, and then I turn and tuck, turn and tuck, turn and tuck, just so I can get that circular shape to put it in my round bowl. So this process is the same. Again, the only rule I've broken so far is the bulk fermentation. You do want to make sure that your bowl is pre-floured so it doesn't stick. I do try to seal the seams here, but because it's so dried out, it doesn't really work out. Now, just to work on my second one, similarly, I am going to even it out, make a rectangular/square shape, take the right corner, left corner, and roll it away from myself. This one was a little bit more dry. I did try to take one end and stick it together, but as you can see here, it is not cooperating with me because it is too dry. I may have messed up here. Now, I try to let gravity do its thing. I take one end. I want it to fall down just so I can get that long log shape. Once again, I'm struggling here, trying to get the seams to shut close. At this point, I just have to move on. I tuck it and roll it away from myself, and this will be in the horizontal container. Try to seal the seams as much as I can. And again, put it in a pre-floured container. As if I didn't learn my lesson, I'm still trying to close the seams. This is what it looks like before I put it in the fridge to cold proof for a day. This is what it looks like after leaving it in the fridge for about a day, and it's ready to be baked. Here I have put some cornmeal down just so it can help avoid any burns on the bottom. I did flour the top a little bit, and here you'll see me cut into it and score. What's important with scoring is you just want to have one big cut either in the center or off to the side so it can help with that spring. That spring is basically when it rises and doubles in size during baking. You're helping that process by allowing that tension to be cut at a certain point in your dough. I've just made a random design here, just hoping for the best because I still don't know how it's going to come out. I preheated the oven at 450 degrees with my Dutch oven inside for at least an hour. So I plop it in there. Dough is super cold. Make sure you seal it shut right away as soon as you can. This is after 35 minutes in the oven at 450 degrees. You want to put it back in the oven uncovered for about 10 minutes at 425 degrees. This is the final look. Not too bad. I'm hoping for the best here. I still haven't cut into it. I do suggest waiting at least an hour, if not 2 hours, before you cut into it. And here are the final shots. Not terrible at all. Here's the crumb shot. And what I learned is you can break a rule. There you go.